Welcome back to BYoungMinistry.com, to another blog and another podcast. Today we're in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 22 through 25, which reads, "Do not be hasty in the laying on of hands, and do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. Stop drinking only water and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illnesses. The sins of some are obvious, reaching the place of judgment ahead of them. The sins of others trail behind them. In the same way, good deeds are obvious, and even those that are not obvious cannot remain hidden forever." That's 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 22 through 25. In our text today, the Apostle Paul continues his instructions for a more biblical eldership in the local church. In view of the tremendous honor that should be given to an elder, and in view of the great potential for dishonor, shame, and public disgrace, the last point that Paul makes on the subject is here in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 22 through 25. In verse 22, again, we read, "Do not be hasty in the laying on of hands, and do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure." As we see in 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 14, the laying on of hands has to do with commending a brother into the work of the Lord. With it came the recognition that this man was chosen of the Lord to do the work that he was already doing. The laying on of the hands of the elders was a symbol of God's affirmation of his call on this man's life and ministry. In the Old Testament sacrificial system, God instructed the Jews to put their hands on the sacrifice that was put on the altar. And in that symbolic way, he was saying, "I identify with this sacrifice made for the forgiveness of my sin." This is the point of laying hands on a brother. It symbolized agreement, unity, identification, and affirmation of someone as being set apart by God to do a certain work of ministry. The apostle is saying here, do not be so quick to agree to the setting apart of a man into the work of the Lord until you know that it is true. Because you could be sharing in something that is not of God. And in context here, the subject is restoring a man who has fallen in one way or another. Paul is saying, do not be too quick to put that man back into a position of leadership. Give it time. And if we hurry a man into commendation, and he is unsuited and unfitted, and he has sinned, we literally koinanos. We literally fellowship with the sin. There is culpability. The implications of the union are very deep and very profound. In verse 23 we read, "Stop drinking water only and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illnesses." Right on the heels of saying keep yourself pure, the Apostle Paul reminds Timothy that it is not wrong to drink some wine for medicinal purposes. All of the ruckus in the church in Ephesus gave Timothy some stomach issues. So the apostle addresses it in a practical way. God gave us wine partly to be a medicine for settling our stomach. In verse 24 we read, "The sins of some are obvious, reaching the place of judgment ahead of them. The sins of others trail behind them." The Apostle Paul reminds us that it isn't too difficult to recognize the things in a man's life that disqualify him from being a recognized leader. Because there are some people whose sins are plain, open and obvious. Their sin leads and follows them, and their sin disqualifies them to be recognized as a leader. In verse 25, we read, "In the same way, good deeds are obvious, and even those that are not obvious cannot remain hidden forever." If there is a man who is doing the work of an elder and fits the qualifications given in 1 Timothy chapter 3, his noble deeds will be known by all. The principle here is whether the man is qualified by his character, and he is naturally doing the work among the people. All too often, churches choose men to be elders who have and will never do the work of an elder. I might say who have not and who will never do the work. This is not to be the case. If that man has a heart for the people and the work they are in, it will be obvious to recognize him and his work. He should be doing the work before being recognized as such. Finally, no leader is perfect, but that should not hinder any of us from striving for perfection. The ministry of the Lord Jesus on this earth rises and falls with people who have God-given leadership skills. God has gifted and talented us all to do the work that He has designed us to do. And the key to life is discovering what you're good at, what you like, what you're talented at, what you're gifted at, and doing it. And godly leadership means God's blessing. And that is what we want, because that is what we need. My friends, I trust this podcast and this blog are helping you in your walk with the Lord. If I can be of further assistance to you, shoot me an email at BYoungMinistry@gmail.com. Hey, have a great day.